It was just a woman at the checkout counter at the airline, and she attacked me as if I was trying to get away with something. In 1987, a major producer suggested burning Dirty Dancing and collecting insurance money instead of releasing it. The reason was one scene that showed something America wasn't ready to see. National sponsors threatened to pull funding. Studio executives panicked. Eleanor Bergstein refused to cut it. The scene cost them millions in advertising and nearly killed the film before anyone saw it. Decades later, that same scene is used in workshops and classrooms across the country. What made it so dangerous? The answer reveals why this small-budget film became more than just a love story. Eleanor Bergstein grew up hearing her own family call her baby, and the name stayed with her until she was 22. It followed her through the noisy Brooklyn streets and into the long summers she spent at Grassinger's in the Catskills. Those summers turned into something like a secret training ground. She danced in local mambo contests and kept winning until people started calling her the teenage mambo queen. Her father was a doctor and her family lived with comfort. Yet she felt pulled toward the world of dancers and staff who worked long hours for little money. That contrast stayed with her years later when she shaped the character of Baby Houseman. She poured all of this into her. The nickname, the summers, the thrill of dancing, the way privilege and struggle could meet in one room. It was personal for her. It was her coming of age tucked inside a fading Catskills world. A few years before Dirty Dancing even existed, she wrote an intimate dancing scene for the 1980 film It's My Turn. She imagined something tender and bold on screen, only to learn the producers had cut it. That moment sank deep. It felt like a piece of her voice had been thrown out without a second thought. For a long time, the loss stayed with her. She carried the frustration in a quiet way, and somewhere inside it began turning into determination. If someone would not let her show the kind of dance she loved, she would build an entire story around it. She wanted dance that felt forbidden, emotional, and close. She wanted a movie that did not shrink away from desire. That tiny heartbreak in 1980 pushed her toward the film that would change her life. She picked the summer of 1963 for the setting. Not 1 year earlier and not 1 year later. It was a year waiting for a storm. Roe v. Wade was still 10 years away and abortion was illegal everywhere in the country. Thousands of women died each year because their only options came from back rooms and strangers. She wanted to show that truth without turning away from it. Penny's dangerous abortion was part of the story from the very first draft. She refused to soften it or hide it because she knew the weight it carried. By choosing 1963, she placed her characters inside a world where politics and private lives kept clashing. It added fear. It added urgency. It reminded people that romance could glow in one corner while another corner held something frightening and real. In 1985, she met Michael Terrace, a dance instructor whose life felt like it had been waiting for her story. He was born Miguel Santiago Gutierrez de Lozano in Spanish Harlem in 1926. He spent decades inside the world of mambo and ballroom and spoke about the dancers who moved between wealthy resort guests and the hard edges of working-class life. He performed at the Palladium Ballroom and Radio City Music Hall and carried stories that stretched across 60 years. One conversation after another helped her shape Johnny Castle. His ambition, his temptations, his discipline, all of it came from people like Terrace. Johnny became a symbol of someone rising from the back rooms of a resort towards something larger, even if the climb felt steep and uncertain. A year earlier, MGM heard her pitch and took her script in 1984. Then new management arrived and the script was pushed into turnaround. It sat there untouched. She finished it in November 1985 and still no one wanted it. It might have stayed buried if Lindigo Tottle had not stepped in and pulled it out of that hole. Vestron Pictures offered only $6 million. It was barely enough to breathe. Filming lasted just 43 days and the heat exhausted the cast until some collapsed and needed treatment. Then the weather turned cold and everything had to be rushed even more. Yet when the film came out, it earned over $214 million around the world. All that rejection turned into something that felt like a miracle. Casting almost cracked the film before it ever found its heart. Billy Zane, only 20 at the time, tested with Jennifer Grey in 1986. Their scenes felt flat and distant. Producers felt no spark between them. He looked too young, and the role asked for something he could not yet carry. If he had stayed, the story might have slipped away without ever touching anyone. Val Kilmer was another option. He said no, calling the script too light. Benicio del Toro was discussed too, but the fit was not there. Without the right dancer, without the right connection, the whole film hung by a thread. Jennifer Grey entered the room quietly and won the role off the beat before she danced a single step. Emile Ardolino saw her uncertainty and her warmth and knew she was perfect. Her father pushed her into the room. She whispered, "Wish me lucky, Daddy," and the words caught something inside him. She had never trained for a role like this, so she took months of lessons until she could move with the confidence the story needed. Her honesty made Baby unforgettable. Patrick Swayze was 34 and unsure if he even wanted to join. He had danced in earlier films and did not want to repeat himself. He worried the script was not dramatic enough. He almost walked away. His wife saw something he could not see and encouraged him to take another look. Even then, Jennifer Grey hesitated. They had worked together on Red Dawn in 1984, and she found him overwhelming. She tried to avoid pairing with him again, but he insisted they try. Their early moments together were rocky, and producers later made them watch their screen tests just to remind them of the chemistry hiding under the tension. Slowly, the friction between them turned into something layered and alive. It became the heartbeat of the movie. The budget squeezed every corner of production. They had only $6 million to work with in 1986 when ordinary films cost over $12 million. Costumes came from thrift stores. The whole movie, rehearsals included, had to be wrapped in under 3 months. Actual filming took only 44 days. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze learned their routines in 2 weeks. Every mistake cost money they did not have. Even the studio seemed ready to give up. Internal memos in 1986 called the project a disaster waiting to happen. After the first rough cut in 1987, Aaron Russo suggested burning the negative and taking the insurance payout. The team felt crushed, but they kept going because they could not imagine abandoning it. Weather nearly ruined the schedule, too. They began near Mountain Lake Lodge in September 1986, and rain poured for days, locations flooded. Time slipped by. When the sun finally returned, autumn leaves started falling. Crew members painted them green so the film would still look like summer. The lake scene came later in October when the water dropped near 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Jennifer Grey shivered through every take. Yet, she kept going because she felt she had to. Even the title felt like a battle. Before Dirty Dancing, the team tried names like I Was a Teenage. Mambo Queen, It's Only Make-Believe, The Time of My Life, and Summer of '63. Each one carried a different tone. Nothing fit. Dirty Dancing sounded crude to Bergstein at first and she resisted it, but it stayed. The water in Mountain Lake, Virginia was not romantic at all in October 1986. It was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius, the kind of cold that feels like knives on your skin. But the script said summer, so the crew had to pretend. Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey walked into that lake again and again trying to make the lake lift rehearsal look light and playful while their bodies were going numb. Swayze later wrote that the water was horrifyingly hypothermically cold. They did take after take. Their lips turned blue. Their teeth shook while the director shouted for them to hold the pose and smile. Behind the pretty blue water on screen, there were 2 people fighting not to shiver, not to show the pain, and not to give up. The cold did not just sting for a moment. It reached into old wounds and started tearing them open. Jennifer Grey paid a brutal price first. When the cameras stopped rolling that day, her body could not warm up. She had been in that 40 degrees water for hours trying to be baby, laughing and splashing, even though she was trembling so hard she could barely stand. After filming, she was rushed to a local hospital. Doctors found her body temperature dangerously low. It was hypothermia. Medics wrapped her, worked to raise her temperature, and watched her closely so she would not slip into something far worse. She later admitted she only did it because she was young and hungry for the role. She had waited her whole life for a big part, for a film that could change everything, and she was ready to risk her health for it. That lake scene that looked so sweet and fun almost killed her. Patrick Swayze carried a different kind of danger into the water. His left knee had been a problem for years. When he was 18, a football injury damaged it badly, and later a tooth infection led to a staph infection that spread into his leg. Doctors had warned at one point that if it was not treated quickly, he could lose the leg within days. That same leg is the one you see lifting Jennifer Grey, spinning, balancing, and stepping so gracefully in Dirty Dancing. During the shoot, all the intense dancing in the freezing mountain lake water made that old injury flare up again. Around the time the film came out in 1987, his knee filled with fluid. It swelled and stiffened so badly that walking was painful, let alone dancing. Production records show he had to visit local doctors repeatedly. His knee was drained over and over during the 43-day shoot to relieve the pressure. Some doctors later said that if he had ignored it, he could have lost the leg. So when you watch him run and leap in the log scene or lift baby in the air, you are looking at a man working through constant sharp pain, trying to hide every wheeze from the camera. He did not make it easier on himself either. Swayze refused to use a stunt double. In the log scene in the woods, he insisted on doing everything himself. The log they stood on was wet and slippery, stretching over a rocky drop. It looks playful and controlled in the movie, like Johnny is teaching baby how to trust her balance and her partner. In real life, he kept falling, take after take. He slipped and crashed down off the log, landing hard, jarring his injured knee again and again. Photos from behind the scenes show him bruised and limping, the pain written across his face once the